Hello, everybody. My name is Tristan Miller, and today I'll be giving you my presentation on lab-grown meat, engineering the future of food. This field is also known in technical terms as cellular agriculture, and it has to do with just sustainable protein production. Um, let's get into it. All right. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how they make lab-grown meat, we're going to talk about why they make lab grown meat. And that's because of, well, you might expect growing meat in a lab would probably have to do with food, right? As you are probably well aware of, there's a lot of people in the world, and that number is only going up. And unfortunately, we're reaching a point where the number of livestock we can realistically raise on this planet without ruining it, it's just the balance is beginning to tip. And as you can see by these statistics, I mean, you know, so much land is necessary to grow animals that are just meant for slaughter. And it's unsustainable. And they create a lot of greenhouse gases. Rice does that too, but at least rice doesn't take up nearly as much land. Maybe we'll get some lab grown rice soon as well. All right, so the good stuff. What is the science behind lab grown meat? Well, basically, it does start from a real animal. I hope that is kind of maybe a sigh of relief for some people. Well, I mean, that might not have won you over to actually eat it yet, but not that that's the purpose of this presentation, but the more I learned about it, the more I got sold on it. But I digress. Um, you basically, it's a lot like stem cell research. You take cells from an animal, stem cells, um, then you cultivate them. Because they're stem cells, they just kind of and you keep them in an environment where they stay as stem cells, and you just make a bunch of them basically in a culture, like a really big petri dish, basically, and then you introduce meat so that it turns from just stem cells into actual muscle that has the right proteins for us to get nutrition from it, or at least more nutrition than just stem cells would be. And bada boom, you end up with it didn't come from a living, breathing animal, but it did come from living cells from what was once a living, breathing animal. Call it what you want, but there you go. Like I wrote it there, meat without slaughter. I'm not part of PETA. Maybe I should need to change that phrasing. So when you're trying to tackle something like getting into the meat industry, there's some logistical and societal kind of issues you need to tackle. Um, First off, when you're working with stem cells, growing enough stem cells to make an industrial level of meat, that's a whole kind of issue in its own. Building factories and labs and stuff like that on that scale. In addition, serum-free medium development. That's a euphemism for basically, I'm not trying to be gross or over the top, but they take cow embryo blood and inject it into the stem cell petries, and that's their source of nourishment. It has like the perfect nutrient balance, but it's kind of redundant, right? We're trying to get away from using animals, but then we're using more animal products intermittently. That's been going down. Like I say, it's developing. Um, Texture engineering, that's just, you want to see the meat look and taste good like meat. It wants to feel like meat. And, it needs to have fat's a little harder to get from stem cells, so that's a whole other bag. But yeah, because of this development, we've gone from it costing $300,000 to make basically half a pound of meat to under 10, which is pretty incredible. So the environmental and ethical benefits, as you might expect, because it's just labs and factories, it's a lot. There's no open wide pastures, and there's so much less water necessary because it's just cells in a box. And if you've ever encountered mold on accident, it's not like you had to keep watering it for it to grow. Uh, Way less cow farts, so less methane. No need for like putting hormones in the system or slaughter. And it's arguably safer and more sustainable. There are a certain number of people that get hurt by cows every year, and I'm just going with cows as my example for brevity. So real world examples of progress in the real world. Real world. Oh my gosh. Companies like Upside Foods, Good Meat, Aleph Farms, they're all doing their thing, trying to find different. They're exploring all sorts of alternatives. I could go into it, but it'd take forever. FDA and USDA, they've approved cultivated chicken, which, if you've been to Walmart, that we probably just need an alternative to this point to the hormone chickens. Singapore approved lab-grown meat, and ongoing research and development in scaffolding and automation, because you can only have so many people producing so many petri dishes. That's kind of one of the logistical issues behind this, is that there's a lot of care behind cell cultivation. They're very fragile. So, future outlook. This is looking like the kind of thing that might be the food of the future. It really does. Its market value is going to be 25 billion in 5 years, projectedly, and it should only be going up from there at this rate. There's only, like I said, the population's only going up, and the land mass in the world is pretty samey. It's not really going up or down in any significant ways. So, got to work with that. This is a pretty cool poster, but if I went through it, it would take the whole 5 minute in quotation mark. This has been 6 minutes so far. Time limit. So I'm gonna move on. Moving on to the conclusion, I would say that this is a really fascinating science. I think it's a really interesting development on stem cell technology. I'm an electrical engineering major, but biotechnology has always really fascinated me. And I think this is something that you should look into in your free time. You never know. Have a nice one. Thank you.